not going to have crime either. They made dozens of arrests, and that's what starts to happen. Again, cashless bail. Watch what we do with that. Today, we're formally declaring a public safety emergency. This is an emergency. This is a tragic emergency. And it's embarrassing for me to be up here. You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday. I don't like being up here talking about how unsafe and how dirty and disgusting this once beautiful capital was.
I'm going to Russia on Friday, you know. I'm going to Russia.
With graffiti all over the walls. It's another part of it, by the way. Because we're talking about safety, but we're also talking about beautification. We have the most beautiful, potentially, capital in the world. We always had. But people come from Iowa, they come from Indiana, they come and then they get mugged. Not going to happen. Keep coming, because by the time you get your trip set, it's going to be safe again, and it's going to be clean very quickly.
I was just going to point out that people have been saying that Biden has been suffering from some sort of mental decline, like dementia, Sleepy Joe, mixes up things so bad. Biden is so bad. What do you call this? What do you call it when Trump just basically says that Alaska is Russia? I'm going to meet Putin in Russia this week. What do you say to that? When he cannot tell which geographical areas belong to which country. The leader of the US has given up territory to Russia. Brilliant. Amazing. He doesn't just sound sick. He sounds demented when he says that Alaska is Russia. Okay, let's see. Now we know.
Hello, beautiful community.
Hello.
As our democracies decline, what happens isn't that competent democracies are going to be replaced by competent authoritarian systems.
No.
It's that very incompetent democracies are going to be replaced by much, 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 much less competent authoritarianism. Now, we want to prevent that, but the trend is in that direction. So the trend is for all the other evils that are going to result from it toward more farce, more ludicrousness.
Also, democracy itself cannot be competent or incompetent. Okay? Yeah, I know I'm being very nitpicky. I know I'm being a very pedantic asshole right now, but a democracy cannot be competent or incompetent. Democracy just is. Democracy is just a system. People within democracies can be competent or incompetent. People that govern within democracies can be competent or incompetent. But democracies themselves cannot be. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. I once told a Trumper that their icon wasn't that bright, and they said, "Nuh-uh, he's sharp as a whip." Yeah, sharp as a whip. When he calls Alaska Russia. What exactly beautification of DC capital has to do with going to Russia? Because he says that he is so embarrassed as a leader of the US that he has to talk about how disgusting the capital is when he's about to go and meet the prestigious leader of Russia. In Russia,
more absurdity. People in power who have no idea what they're doing, even out of power, let alone in power.
Embarrassing.
Eventually, in the 2030s, a time will come for a more serious global circuit of hard-nosed authoritarians who might be less buffoonish. But because in so many respects you can't run a country properly.
I mean, say what you want about Putin, he is not buffoonish. He's from the KGB. Like, that is his background. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to exert control. He knows how to play the game. He definitely knows how to play Trump. So I wouldn't say that Putin is a buffoonish dictator. I would not say that about Orban either. There's a reason why he was able to stay in power for as long as he did. Lukashenko, I'm on the fence because a lot of his legitimacy is from Putin. Basically, same as with Kadyrov. So it would be difficult to say how long they would stay in power if it wasn't for Putin. Like Lukashenko, for example. He might have, if he did not. If it hadn't been for Russia's backing, Belarus could have very well been a democratic country in 2020 because of all the riots, all the protests, etc. If it weren't for Russia's backing back then, I believe there was a much bigger chance for Belarusian emancipation. I don't know. He's probably not gonna explain in the video what's happening with them.
Like that. There will be greater and greater room for farce the more our democracies decline and are partly replaced by authoritarianism. So Trump says that he's going to Russia to meet Vladimir Putin, when in fact he's going to Alaska. And it's just a slip, and we might say in a moment how that slip arises in Trump's mind. I don't think dementia is quite right, it's a bit lazy. But the trouble is that there is symbolism to this slip. Not as much symbolism as there is to the meeting. The meeting is very symbolic.
Yeah. And it's going to throw Ukraine under the bus again. It's going to be one more push by Putin and one more acceptance by Trump to throw Ukraine under the bus. Trump's going to be pushing harder and harder and harder for Ukraine to accept territorial concessions. And he already said now, as I've said before, he already stated that there's a possibility that he'll just walk away and say good luck to both parties.
And of course there is symbolism in Trump's yet again.
Yeah, it's another peace negotiation talk, yeah. They've stated that they would consider inviting Zelensky as well, but Putin has to agree to it. So there you have it. Putin has to agree to it.
And choosing to renew attacks on Zelensky, talking about how Zelensky didn't need any parliamentary constitutional approval to start killing people and start the war, but now he does if he needs a deal.
Yeah, that's another thing. Zelensky said that if there's going to be any territorial concession, swapping, or whatever else, he's going to need to have the parliamentary approval for this. And already Trump, who as I've said just seconds ago, is going to pressure Ukraine more and more and more and more to give up territory, is saying, well, you didn't really need that approval to start the war. Because once again, Trump is very happy to sell the narrative that actually somehow it is Ukraine that is responsible for this war. It is Ukraine that has somehow triggered and started this war, and not the country that has invaded. That is the narrative that we're at. That is the story that Trump is trying to sell, that he's trying to push. The story that is, by some incredible coincidence, with exact lockstep with the story that Russia is also trying to tell. Because as I said before, Russian pundits, political scientists, politicians themselves, they all like a chorus say that there are two main culprits behind the war. Number one is Zelensky, the warmonger, and number two is Europe, Zelensky's unhinged backer. So the fact that Trump is non-critically siding off on this narrative, that already makes me very, very nervous about any sort of peace negotiation, any sort of summit, anything really. I believe that Trump will just, for the sake of stopping the killing, stopping the war, building this legacy of being the peacemaker, he'll just throw Ukraine absolutely under the bus. He'll try to pressure and pressure and pressure. Already J.D. Vance has announced that that the United States are ending I believe he called it the ending of funding of the Ukrainian war business, of the war racket. We're going to listen to the clip, so it's okay. I'm going to put the clip on right now because I have it somewhere around here. I think. Do I? God, I thought I had it. The JD Vance. Don't worry, I'll find it. It should be on YouTube. Not a difficult clip to find. JD Vance, US funding. Where is it? Done with funding Ukraine's US forest. There you go. That's it. I think this is the clip. Can it load? Can we?
I think the president, and I certainly think that.
There you go. Can we get it to a higher? Jesus Christ. Peace negotiations with Russia is such a dead end. Why is Trump even playing this peace game? Like, his supporters don't care about Ukraine. They think Ukraine has irrelevance because that was one of his promises. It was one of his promises, and he built one of his big slogans was no new wars, and I will end the war very quickly. So there you go. That's his whole shtick. No new wars under me, and I will end the wars. I'll be the peacemaker. I will be the deal maker. I will be the conflict solver guy.
I think the president, and I certainly think that America, we're done with the funding of the Ukraine war business. We want to bring about a peaceful settlement to this thing. We want to stop the killing. But Americans, I think, are sick of continuing to send their money, their tax dollars to this particular conflict. But
there you go. There you have it. That is it, basically. We're not funding. And of course, he continued to say that moving forward, Europe is going to be the primary funder of any military aid to Ukraine, and it's going to do so via purchasing of weapons from the United States.
Ritual, a sense of what questions should or shouldn't be raised, is really important in politics. That's why, even if you are sympathetic with the loss of trust of many American citizens who voted for Trump, you've got to feel kind of really allergic about something like January 6th, because it's a transgression that takes a chip out irreversibly, a sense that certain rituals and certain procedures can't be questioned. Don't underestimate how much the normalization of certain things via ritual, via expectations, via sense of what questions should or shouldn't be raised, how much that's part of keeping a democracy going. And so Trump's slip, the very fact of the meeting, his attack on Zelensky, are all a kind of commentary on the might is right imperial borderlessness that at the level of political ideology, Trump and Putin actually share.
I agree.
What's mine is mine until you come and get it from me. What's yours is yours until I come and get it from you. Now, Putin would add a very interesting rejoinder here that specifically captures what he's doing in Ukraine, and that's what's mine is mine only so long as I take what's yours as a preemptive way of stopping you from coming to take what's mine. As Greg Uden likes to say about Putin's borderlessness, if you're not expanding, you're being defeated. So, as funny as it might seem,
it's not funny.
It's genuinely harmful to
it's not funny.
U.S. democracy and the state of the West that the meeting is happening and that it is happening in Alaska.
Yeah.
And the reason...
It is going to fail. It is absolutely going to fail. It's not going to be a win for Trump. It's not going to be a win for Ukraine. It's not going to be a win for anybody involved except maybe for Putin and Russia. That is my opinion on this summit.
Isn't just the decline of old age. It's the decline of old age in constellation with two things, with ADHD, which often gets worse in old age, actually. We could expect that.
I didn't know that Trump had ADHD, but I'm not super surprised. I will say that I'm not super shocked by the revelation that Trump has ADHD.
More through Trump's term and through his narcissism, because he's so keen that he's doing Russia. I'm doing Russia. I'm finally doing Russia. And so he got excited and he thought he was doing Russia in Russia because he's so excited about doing Russia. That was part of that slip too.
Jesus.
And it was part of the narcissistic narrative of his entire presentation, where he said, well, I don't want to be talking about domestic crime because it's so embarrassing because I'm meeting Putin.
Yeah.
Riddled with domestic crime, but not somehow in Trump's picture of him.
Yeah. But would Zelensky talk to Putin? He wanted to. He wants a direct confrontation with Putin. Of course, he wants a direct confrontation with Putin. But that is not something that he wants. I think he will, yeah.
And so that psychology of transactional might is right exchange is, even as a dispositional attitude, really harmful. You know,
I'm very distraught that that is the position that the United States has adopted. Because, like it or not, Donald Trump represents the United States as the head of the country. Like, we just cannot walk away from that. That under Trump, the United States effectively became just another greedy empire. That's one that wants to grab as much as possible, that wants to make deals with other greedy empires. That is the extent of it. The only hope for Ukraine right now is if Europe manages to step up and do what it should, but I'm really scared about that. I'm not sure if it will. I'm actually not sure if Europe is willing to do what needs to be done. It postures a lot. There's a lot of posturing from Europe when it comes to warning the United States about land concessions. There's Trump who supposedly, well, not supposedly, he already, I think, announced that 2 days before meeting Putin, he will meet with European leaders and Zelensky, and they will discuss the thing. But my faith in Europe's ability to salvage the situation is unfortunately limited based on Europe's past actions. Unfortunately, I know that I should offer some hope, I should offer some positivity, but I'm a Polish person, and Polish people are not well known for their big optimism, for the cheery attitude. Unfortunate as it is, I have to stay close to my nature, quote unquote.
no, it's not that Trump is going to say Alaska is 99% American and 1% Russian. He's going to say it's 100% American if you ask him. But the way he speaks about matters like that is itself corrosive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, hypothetically, let's sort of blow this up a bit. You know, he might say, Mr. Trump, isn't it a bit dodgy to meet Putin in Alaska, given that Alaska used to be Russian? Doesn't it send the wrong message about, a kind of unhealthy apparent ease with which territories might be exchanged? Alaska is very much ours. It's perfectly beautifully ours, and we're too strong to lose pretty much anything, including Alaska, but pretty much anything. And we're not going. Biden could avoid it. We're not going to lose. Biden could have lost it. We're not going to lose it. If we lost,
And yet Trump has been talking about how some territory swapping will have to happen and it will be good, but some of it will be bad. He will try to get some of the territory that's near the sea back to Ukraine, but unfortunately some of it Russia will keep. It's a very messy messaging. And I will say it right now. When it comes to this, I am very, very extreme. And by extreme, I mean, that's not an extreme position. Any land concession by Ukraine it's a disaster. Any land concession by Ukraine is a disaster because it means that territorial integrity of countries mean nothing. As long as a bigger country, preferably a nuclear power, can invade a smaller neighbor that is not a nuclear power, they will get something. There's a promise to them that they will get something. No matter how the conflict ends, they will end up with gains. And that should not be a precedent to be encouraged. That invasion, illegal invasion, genocidal invasion will be rewarded with any type of territorial gains. That should not be a thing. That should be absolutely discouraged. Russia should be getting nothing out of this. But Trump doesn't care about world stability. Trump doesn't really care about nuclear deterrence. Trump doesn't care about countries not racing to get nuclear weapons, because that will be, of course, the result as well. That countries will very much rethink their attitude towards having nuclear weapons. Trump doesn't care about any of those things. He just cares about the killing stopping, quote unquote, even though he actually does not care about people dying at all in the slightest. He only cares about the war ending on paper. He just wants to get that peace. That's all that he cares about. He doesn't care what sort of peace it is, what the long-term consequences of that peace will be. He probably doesn't even care if it just buys Russia time to attack again. I believe that the United States, as part of negotiations, already sort of swung the carrot of lifting sanctions if it stops aggression, and Russia has already replied that it does not plan to stop any of its major offensives. That is a thing that happened. Russia is proposing not a full ceasefire but a partial ceasefire, which means that on certain parts of the front line it will just continue. So that is the reality of the situation. That is the reality of this summit that is about to transpire.
We would get it back almost instantly. 24, probably 24, maybe less, maybe 1 minute. We could get it back. If we lost it, we would get it back in a minute, but we're not going to lose it. It's pretty much been ours pretty much forever, for a very, very long time, and Russia, quite frankly, has nothing to do with it. But if we lost it, we would probably get it back under my leadership. We would get it back probably 30, probably 35 seconds. We would get it back. So it's that.
Crimea only would have considered peace talks if Putin returned all the children and gave up all their land. Yeah, to get the hell out of Ukraine, basically. But he cannot do that, by the way. He cannot do that. Putin cannot do that. Like, he's gone too far to just sheepishly retreat. He would have to be forced to do so. And for that, the United States would have to present a much stronger front against him. But it won't, because Trump likes Putin a lot more than he likes Zelensky. That's the gist of it. He likes dictators because he shares a lot of the worldview with them. He sees them as allies, some of them he sees as friends. So no, the United States cannot be relied upon for that sort of pressure that would force Putin to get troops out of Ukraine as well as return the children. I don't think Trump has mentioned the children topic even once. I don't think that's even within his thought process when talking about the peace negotiations.
That incoherence, stimulated by narcissism, stimulated by neurodiversity, that nevertheless also contains the seed of nothing being rightfully somebody's, because you can't make a claim for something in terms of a right or in terms of a value. This is not mine because I'm strong enough to keep it, but this is mine because it's appropriate for it to be mine, right? There's a seed of an asphyxiation of all such discourse in the way Trump goes on, domestically and on the foreign stage. And that very perniciously reveals only one way among others in which Trump is an ideological ally of this global wash.
And yeah, he is an ideological ally to people like Putin, to people like Xi Jinping, to people like all the tin pot dictators, basically.
Might is right revolutionary monarchism, of which Putinism is perhaps a sort of radical and extreme self-immolating representation.
Yeah. And also, of course, let's not forget that, combine it with the fact that I have no clue why Trump hypes up Russia so much, how he buys wholesale Russian propaganda, why his knowledge on the conflict, on the war, is negative. He has negative knowledge on this conflict. He has proven that time and time again. Listen to him talk about the initial invasion when he was talking about how Kiev could have been taken in 4 hours, or at least reached in 4 hours. This is the level of wartime analysis that you can expect from Donald Trump.
War because the tanks got.
Why is this so quiet?
war because the tanks got stuck in the mud. Some commander made a better. They would have been in Kiev in 4 hours going down the highway, but a Russian general made a brilliant decision to go through the farmland instead. War because the tanks got stuck.
Yeah, if only Russia would have. And yes, they did use the highway. If only Russia would have used the highway, they could have been in Kiev in 4 hours. But they used the farmland. That is the level of expertise that we get from Donald Trump. We also have the statement where he attacks. Yes, I also have that link where Trump attacks Zelensky for having been the supposed instigator of the conflict, that he did not need the approval of the Rada for starting the war and killing everybody, because that is exactly what Zelensky said. He just started the war and decided to kill everybody, but he suddenly needs the approval for land concessions. Listen to this. Ridiculous. This is the guy that goes to Alaska on Friday, or to Russia, as he said, to negotiate peace. This is the guy that says that he will just end this war.
I think we'll have constructive conversations. Then after that meeting, immediately, maybe as I'm flying out, maybe as I'm leaving the room, I'll be calling the European leaders who I get along with very well. And, I have a great relationship, I think, with all of them. And I get along with Zelensky, but, I disagree with what he's done. Very, very severely disagree. This is a war that should have never happened. Wouldn't have happened.
What he's done.
But I'll be speaking to Zelensky. The next meeting will be with Zelensky and Putin, or Zelensky and Putin and me. I'll be there if they need. But I want to have a meeting set up between the two leaders. I was a little bothered by the fact that Zelensky was saying, well, I have to get constitutional approval. I mean, he's got approval to go into war and kill everybody, but he needs approval to do a land swap, because there'll be some land swapping going on. I know that through Russia and through conversations with everybody. To the good, for the good.
Who's the everybody? Who is the everybody that he has had those conversations with? Who is the everybody? I already know from Russia that there will be land swap. This is, it really is worth pointing out time and time and time again how disgusting it is that Trump blames Zelensky and Ukraine for being invaded, and how he now says Zelensky had the approval to go into war and kill everyone, but he suddenly needs it. He didn't need it to go into war and start killing everyone, but now he suddenly needs it for the land swap. Suddenly he needs it.
Good of Ukraine. Good stuff, not bad stuff. Also, some bad stuff for both. So there's good and there's bad. But it's very...
There's good and there's bad. Ukraine will have to just accept that we will throw it under the bus. Ukraine will just have to accept ceding territory, possibly demilitarizing, who knows. Ukraine will have to accept that and this whole thing started because Witkov, the special envoy to Ukraine, has misunderstood what Putin told him, like an idiot, like an incompetent buffoon that he is. He misunderstood what Putin told him as willingness of Russian forces to withdraw from certain territories. But no, Russia has no such intention, and Witkov came back to the US, falsely reported on what Russia would be willing to agree to, and then looked like an incompetent buffoon that he is. And that basically was the prelude to this Alaska meeting. Yeah, that is basically it. And I know that Trump also will meet with European leaders and Zelensky 2 days prior, but I honestly don't have much faith that that will lead to any significant change in the direction of this conversation in Alaska itself. I do not have much hope for that. I think that he will talk with Zelensky and European Union leaders and vaguely inform them on what he is planning to do during the meeting, and then he'll just go to Alaska and throw Ukraine under the bus. That is my prediction. This. Trump to hold talks with Zelensky, EU leaders 2 days before meeting with Putin. I have no clue what these meetings are, what these talks are supposed to lead to. I doubt it will lead to anything, but it will happen. Vice President Donald Trump will hold talks with European leaders and President Volodymyr Zelensky on August 13th. Right now it is 12. It's going to happen tomorrow. The talks will happen tomorrow. European Commission press office told Kyiv Independent. The meetings will take place 2 days before Trump's scheduled meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, which, by the way, the United States has said that it would consider inviting Zelensky to that meeting as well, but I'm pretty sure that will absolutely not happen, marking it their first in-person meeting since Trump returned to office. The summit comes as Washington seeks to broker a potential resolution to the war in Ukraine, which would include a lot of land concession on Ukraine's part, which Zelensky, by the way, has already officially said that Ukraine will absolutely not agree to any land concessions. And I think that is the correct move for Ukraine to do. Ukraine should be very, very firm about not agreeing to any land concessions. The summit comes as Washington seeks to broker a potential blah blah blah. In a coordinated diplomatic effort ahead of the talks, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has organized an online meeting between Zelensky and key European leaders. The meeting is scheduled for 3 p.m. Kyiv time on August 13. So it'll happen on 2 p.m. my time, because Ukraine is 1 hour ahead of Polish time, as in forward, 1 hour forward. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen will take part in the calls with other EU leaders. President Zelensky and President Trump, Commission spokesperson Guillaume Messier, confirmed to the Kyiv Independent. Leaders from Finland, France, the United Kingdom, Italy, and Poland are also expected to join, along with a representative from NATO, Sopelne reported. Moscow has consistently rejected a US proposal for an unconditional ceasefire backed by Kyiv and European countries, intensifying drone and missile attacks against Ukraine throughout the summer. Yeah, and some key cities have apparently fallen, like Chasiv Yar. We'll have to confirm. On August 8th, the situation on the front line has been deteriorating. That is a thing that I can tell you with 100% confidence. On August 8th, Trump announced a summit with Putin and reportedly told Ukraine and European leaders that the Kremlin is open to negotiations if land swaps are part of the deal. So basically what Russia is saying, we want our maximalist demands to be met, because this is not about Ukraine's sovereignty and integrity. This is basically about meeting Russia's demands, because as we all know, in an aggressive country, invading its smaller neighbor should be rewarded for doing so in territorial gain. Though it remains unclear what such a deal would entail, a source in Ukraine's presidential office told the Kyiv Independent that Moscow seeks Kyiv's full withdrawal from partially occupied Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts in the east, while offering to withdraw its forces from the limited areas it holds in the northeastern Sumy and Kharkiv oblasts. That's not a land swap. That is not a land swap at all, actually. Russia saying, if you give up part of your territory, then we will stop occupying different parts of your territory. That's not a land swap. Do you know what would be a land swap? A land swap would be Russia saying, okay, we will take this bit of Ukrainian territory, but in exchange, Ukraine will get this piece of Russian territory. That would be an actual land swap. Well, this is just nonsense. To call it a land swap is an insult, actually. Yeah, we'll withdraw forces from part of the territory that we're occupying right now. Yeah, if you give us some other territory, if you just will allow us to permanently occupy other parts of your territory. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Ridiculous. Zelensky's participation in the upcoming summit also remains uncertain. I'm very I'm very confident that Zelensky will not be invited, because that would throw a wrench in Trump's plan to quietly throw Ukraine under the bus. Zelensky would just push back on the spot, and that is an inconvenience to the peace talks. That is why Trump has intensified his attacks on him, because he is an inconvenience in all of this. Publicly, Putin has demanded a ban on Ukraine's NATO membership and a full Ukrainian withdrawal from partially occupied Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia oblasts as precondition for peace talk. Precondition. So there would be more conditions during peace talks, mind you. This is just a precondition to sit at the negotiating table. A non-starter demand to give up all this. This is a non-starter. In turn, Zelensky has rejected ceding territory to Russia and urged a ceasefire at the first step toward peace talks, a position backed by Kyiv's European partners. Well, how much that backing actually is worth remains to be seen. Because so far, Europe has not given us much hope. Not much hope. So that is Trump's meeting 2 days before. That is this. I think I've several times have indicated that I have no big hopes for this meeting. There will be some changes in land. Let us watch this as well. Because all of that, I think those statements that they speak for themselves. I think those statements just speak for themselves.
Bad. But it's very complex because you have lines that are very uneven, and there'll be some swapping, there'll be some changes in...
Again, calling it a swap is very dishonest, because it all happens on Ukrainian territory. There's no swapping involved.
Land.
If you give us territory, we will not take even more territory. That is the swap.
The word that they will use is, they make changes. We're going to change the lines, the battle lines. Russia's occupied.
Yeah, sovereignty and integrity of nation states, of countries mean nothing now. The integrity of borders of countries mean nothing now. If this is pushed through and Ukraine has to cede territory, then that basically tells all the tin pot dictators that that land is for grabs. If you invade, even if you fail, you will have gained something. You will have gained some territory, even if you fail, which will make it worth it. Which will just make it worth it. It will encourage further conflicts. Already, there's word of Russia preparing for the Baltics, by the way. Lithuania. Already, there's murmurs and whispers of Russia preparing for further conquest.
A big portion of Ukraine. They've occupied some very prime territory. We're going to try and get some of that territory back for Ukraine.
Some. We're going to try to get some of that territory back for Ukraine.
But they've taken some very prime territory. They've taken largely ocean, in real estate we call it oceanfront property. That's always the most valuable property. If you're in a lake, a river, or an ocean, it's always the best property. Well, Ukraine, a lot of people don't know that Ukraine was largely 1,000 miles of ocean. That's gone.
Yeah, it's gone because the West has dropped the ball. And now the United States is just interested in throwing Ukraine under the bus to commence business as usual.
Other than one small area, Odessa, it's a small area. There's just a little bit of water left. So I'm going to go and see the parameters. Now, I may leave and say, good luck. And that'll be the end. I may say this is not going to be settled.
Yeah. Already he says that he might just abandon the whole thing. I've said it before, and I think it's worth reminding you once again that before the negotiation even commenced, Trump is already considering just abandoning the whole thing. Just drop it. Just get out of this. Just abandon the whole thing. As a cherry on top, we're gonna talk about Trump's biggest cheerleader. Ruth doesn't think Putin will ultimately get rewarded for invading Ukraine. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has rejected the idea that a future US-mediated agreement could ultimately reward Russian leader Vladimir Putin for his invasion of Ukraine. That is a blatant lie. This guy is Trump's biggest cheerleader. Any 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 concession on territory by Ukraine is by definition rewarding Russia's invasion. Any territory that Russia gains is a Russian victory because it just means that the invasion was not for nothing. I think Trump has made some mistakes already. Number one, in holding this meeting on American soil, legitimizing a pariah leader of the rogue state. Second, he's allowed Putin to get first mover advantage by putting his peace plan on the table first. Quote from Bolton. Quote from Rutte. No, I don't think the risk of rewarding Russia for the invasion is there. And all my respect for John, and please send him my best regards, but I would not agree on this point with him. I would agree. I would actually agree. And saying that there's no risk of that is just, again, bootlicking for Trump. That is what it is. Ruth said Trump is putting incredible pressure on Russia. That is bullshit. That is straight up bullshit. Trump has been putting zero pressure on Russia. That is ridiculous. What happened last week, the extra 25% tariffs on India, because we know that India is one of the biggest buyers of oil and other materials from Russia. India has just straight up ignored this, by the way. And this has had a huge impact potentially on the Indian economy. And this is forcing them to be much more clear with Moscow on what they expect Putin to do when it comes to this war in Ukraine. No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because on the India side, the government is pushing Modi to be much, much more firm with the United States and not to give in. So this has not worked at all. And this has definitely not put any pressure on Russia. But also the fact that he opened the floodgates again when it comes to lethal weapons being delivered into Ukraine, paid by the Europeans but delivered by the Americans. So this is all clear evidence that President Putin is absolutely adamant to bring this war to an end, but also keep maximum pressure on Putin. Bullshit. Bullshit. Already, J.D. Vance has announced that the United States will stop all military support for Ukraine, and that now Europe will have to do all the support via buying the weapons. So if this is how maximum pressure on Russia looks like, then I don't want to see how minimum pressure looks like in this person's mind. This is complete nonsense. This is cope. This is delusional. I know that this guy is a Donald Trump fangirl, so to speak. I really just would kiss the foot marks on the floor and behind him, but this is getting ridiculous. This is just outside reality. This is just complete delusion. I don't have much hope for this meeting. I hope it will be a failure. I think it's doomed to fail from the start. That is my opinion on it. And all it does is set a bad precedent. All right, we've done it. How long has this segment been?